Hi, everyone. Welcome to Speak to Influence. I'm Karen Sachs. I'm the founder of Act Like a Great Communicator, a free community of 155 native English and English as a second language speakers who are interested in making more money, getting more opportunities, and having deeper relationships by increasing and improving their communication skills. Now, last week, I reached out and I asked them what was the one thing that they would like to do to improve their communication skills. And the most common response that I got was communication under pressure. So that's tonight's topic. Now, for some people, every conversation is a communication under pressure. They don't like speaking, they're afraid of speaking in groups, or even sometimes to just one other person. But for most of us, it's more like job interviews, executive meetings, presentations, live podcasts. Maybe it's a difficult client, or maybe you've been challenged in a meeting. All of those can increase our stress as we're speaking. And unfortunately, pressure changes communication. And the problem with that is that most of the most important conversations, the ones that change opportunities, come in these hard conversations, not the everyday conversations. So it's important that we see when pressure is building in our communications and what we're going to do about it. So, first, the most significant thing that happens when you are stressed is physiological. Your heart starts to race a little bit, your breathing becomes more shallow, and things like common words become hard to find. Cognitive activity becomes more difficult. You ramble and lose your train of thought, and you forget obvious words. The most important physiological thing that happens is that you begin to sound uncertain, and that is the kiss of death. You want to make sure that if at any point during your conversation you hear yourself sounding uncertain or not confident, you need to get control of yourself as quickly as possible. Because things happen when you're under pressure. First of all, you have a tendency to talk faster. Talking faster is very bad for these type of conversations because it reduces clarity. When you reduce clarity, that means it makes it tougher for people to understand what you're saying. And speaking faster, especially if you are an English as a second language speaker, is a very bad thing. So if you hear yourself speaking faster, take a deep breath and slow down. The second thing that'll happen is you'll start over explaining. You'll ramble a little bit. Instead of just explaining one way, you'll feel the need to over explaining and attach a different perspective to it and approach it from a different angle. And that just creates more lack of clarity. The other thing that will happen is lack of the point first conversation. You won't start with your point first. You'll sort of work your way up to it. You'll go around the circle a few times, build it up, create the context, and then you'll tell people what you were talking about. And again, lack of clarity. You'll also start adding filler words like so, and like. Those types of filler words create issues in your conversation. They make you sound uncertain. They make you sound unprofessional. And they definitely are a result of you being under pressure. You'll also find that you start losing your breath control. When you lose your breath control, your breathing becomes much more shallow. And when it becomes more shallow, sometimes you run out of air before you finish a sentence. That makes you sound very airy. Also, there's that feeling of, I can't breathe. That's going to create more stress for you and just make all of these things happen more. So you really need to be aware of these. Something else that happens when you're under pressure and you feel like you're being attacked is that you can become very defensive. Defensiveness does not help the situation. You are not being attacked. They are not attacking you. They are asking questions about what you're discussing. Don't take it personally. Hey, Bob, welcome. I'm glad you're here with me tonight. And finally, you forget to listen. When you're under pressure, forgetting to listen is huge. You start rehearsing what you're going to say next. That doesn't help you. You need to be a good listener at all times, and most importantly, during challenging conversations. You need to respect the tone. You need to be prepared to respond based on what they're saying. And you can't do that if you're rehearsing the very next word that you're going to say. So, what happens when you're stressed? You start talking faster, you start over explaining, you don't start with your point, you add filler words, you lose breath control, you become defensive, you forget to breathe, you forget obvious words, and your cognitive capacities begin to slow down. That sucks. That is not where you want to be in any conversation. And the good news is that you can learn to control it. You can learn to figure out in 3 simple steps, take control of your nerves and move forward professionally with confidence and with certainty. First and foremost, and this is my favorite, you hear me talk about it in every single podcast, but it's the most underutilized communication tool, and that is the pause. Pausing creates several opportunities for you. Pausing allows you to emphasize certain points. Before a point, take a micro pause. And after your point, take another micro pause. That not only tells the listener that, hey, this was important, but it gives them a moment to digest what you've just said. So many people believe that silence is a bad thing. And that's where filler words come in, as people start and ahhing because they're not comfortable with silence. Silence is authority. Deliberate silence shows leadership. It shows confidence in yourself. It also gives you a chance to breathe and be calm. Deliberate pauses, deliberate silence is a huge step in reducing your nerves in a high pressure conversation. The second is what we call point first conversation. And you've heard me talk about this before, but this is very, very important. Whenever you have a conversation, you want to start with the point first. Start with your conclusion. Say first, my recommendation is that we adopt Plan B. Now, most people will go around in circles. They will say what they're going to be saying before they say it. They add a lot of context and they over explain. And after they've lost their audience, then they say, and so I recommend Plan B. No. Start with the conclusion. I recommend Plan B. Then tell them why. Then tell them the next action. And then shut up. You want to make sure that you don't keep talking. Start with your point, explain as necessary, tell them what's next, and then be quiet. That's the second way to get control of the situation. When you know that you're starting with your conclusion, it gives you the opportunity to take control of the conversation. So, pause, point first conversation. And then the third is control your pace. When you are agitated, when you're nervous, when you feel like you're being attacked, you have a tendency to, in most cases, speak much faster. If that's the case, you need to slow yourself down. First of all, because it improves the clarity of the conversation that you're having. But the other thing that it does is that it keeps yourself calm. There are other people who have a tendency to begin speaking very slowly when they're nervous. If that's the case, and you're one of those speakers, then you need to speed up a little bit. You need a nice moderate pace because that controls the whole situation, not just your nerves, but it controls the whole conversation because it appears that you are calm. And when you're calm, you drive the conversation. So, the three-part formula to stay clear under pressure: pause, point first, pace. 3 P's. Now, high pressure situations come in all shapes and sizes, but they ultimately come down normally to about 5 important questions or statements that you need to react to. The first one is, what do you say when you don't know the answer? That's a scary place to be. The first thing to do is pause and then say, I don't know, but here's how I would approach that. So, again, I don't know, but here's how I would approach that. Never try to BS your way through an answer that you don't know. Take ownership and acknowledge that you don't know, but then don't just stop there. Don't just say, I don't know. Add, but here's how I would approach it. Here's what I think. What do you do when you're challenged? You're in a meeting, you've just made a proposal, and someone aggressively comes back and says, I think that's a stupid idea. Well, I don't agree with that at all. Or you're having a conversation with a difficult client. What you want to do is control the situation by calmly responding, that's a fair point, or that's a fair question. What about when you're constantly being interrupted? That can be so frustrating. When you're being interrupted, don't get upset, don't take it personally, and don't get defensive. What you want to do is just put your hand up to the person and say, let me finish my thought. Let me finish that thought. It acknowledges the person that has interrupted you, so you don't just ignore them, but you also clarify to them and take back control by saying, let me finish that thought. What about when you make a mistake? It happens. We all make a mistake. And the most important thing to do is to take ownership of it. When you make a mistake, the first thing you want to say is, you're right. Or, I made a mistake. And let me clarify. So if you say something incorrectly, you want to acknowledge, you're right. Let me clarify that. And finally, what do you do when you're nervous? First of all, you want to focus on helping, not performing. You want to just control your emotions first and foremost, because ultimately, as the speaker, you can control the environment of the entire conversation by calming yourself. Calm your heartbeat. Take a breath. Calm your breathing. Pause. First point, control your pace. Know what to say, but whatever you say, make sure that it is a situation where you are in control. Now, I have had experiences where nerves have hit me. I've spoken to 1,000 people multiple times. I've been a professional speaker nationally for more than 25 years. But I still get nervous before I speak. And before these live podcasts, I get nervous too. But I have to control my emotions. But every now and then, I forget what I was going to say. And that is a terrifying moment. But instead of freaking out, instead of saying and ah, I pause. And in that few short seconds that I pause, I normally will get the words back that I want to say. Now, if the words don't come, the good news is that I can move on to the next thought, whatever it is. Because the people who are in the audience, the person who I'm having the conversation with, the people to whom I'm presenting, they don't know what I was going to say next. If you lose your train of thought, just breathe and pause, and it will come to you, or something will come to you. And honestly, if you can't remember, just admit it and say, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. And then regroup and start talking again. The important thing is not to BS. People can smell BS anywhere, and it's going to affect your credibility. It's going to affect their trust in you. So even though you're nervous, don't ever try to BS your way through it. Now, what if you're an English as a second language speaker? ESL speakers often feel uncomfortable about their accent when they shouldn't. The problem is not the accent. The problem is clarity. So, how do I be clear if I have an accent? You be clear by speaking slowly and calmly. Well, that's fine, except when I'm in a communication under pressure. Then what do I do? Then you speak slowly and calmly. You utilize what we've talked about before, the pause, the point first, and the pace, the breath, and the confidence in yourself so that you keep yourself under control. Because if you start speaking quickly and you have a strong accent, you're going to affect the clarity of your conversation significantly, and that's not going to benefit anyone. The other thing that happens is that all of us have a tendency to lose our communication structure, and that has to do with our rambling. That has to do with not staying with the basic noun, verb, point first conversation. If you're an ESL speaker and you start speaking quickly and you're nervous, you may lose that structure, which means you're rambling, you're over explaining. That doesn't serve any clarity purpose. Pause, breathe. Some of the greatest speakers in the world get nervous sometimes. And when they do, they get through it. And they get through it with the 3 Ps. They get through it by remaining clear when everyone else becomes reactive. Don't be reactive, be proactive. Remember, communication doesn't have to be high pressure. It's going to happen, but how you react is going to affect how people look at you, whether you continue to be heard and trusted and taken seriously. So, what situations make you most uncomfortable when you're speaking? Is it a difficult client? Is it when you have to make a presentation? Is it when you have to talk to your boss? Whatever it is, remember the 3 Ps. Pause, point first, pace. If you need help reminding that information and other ways to improve your communication so that you can earn more money, get more opportunities, and have deeper relationships, I invite you to join my free Act Like a Great Communicator community. You can get to it by going to my Substack website and click on Join the Community. I look forward to seeing you there, and I look forward to seeing you at our next podcast, Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So for Bob, thank you so much for being live with me today. I appreciate it. And for all of you watching the replay, thanks a lot. Have a great day, and I'll see you on Tuesday. Bye.